Welcome back to Absolutely. I've been trying to start this video for the last 25 minutes, but Hassan won't let me. Today we're going to talk about the failure of The Flash and why do we think and what do we know as to why it failed. Joining me today is going to be Dan from Comicstorian, Hassan from a channel where he does Mickey Mouse stuff, and Neb from the internet.
Just my Twitter account, that's it.
I'm Hassan from Bad Days, the commentary YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Benny Potter.
And I also knew that if I messed it up as a joke, you would come back with the actual list because all I remember is just called Bad Days. So anyway.
Yeah, it's fine.
So before we get into it, today's original topic was to be a broad discussion about The Flash because Dan, Neb, and Hassan didn't get a chance to review it. But we're going to put out an entire video as to why Hassan didn't properly see the movie. So before we get into that, let's jump into what does Neb think about The Flash overall? Because Neb, you haven't had any space to really. You've gone insane on Twitter. I will say that. I've seen your Twitter. You've literally just gone insane.
A little bit.
Hassan has lost his mind. I've read
loved
so
the
much
movie,
crazy stuff.
It's a tough situation where I did love the movie, genuinely. Like, that's not a bit. But it's sort of like Batman v Superman again. You know what I mean? Or it's just like,
yeah.
Oh, actually, it's closer to Green Lantern. I take it back. Yeah, it's Green Lantern. So I've just been coping with that. You know, as a DC fan, I just wanted a win for so long. And you never get them. It just keeps on. It's chaotic, but it never swings the other way. It's just bad on one side. It was like the last win was like Aquaman, basically. Even the Batman made a lot of money, but not as much as it should have, really. And yet now we're here, and The Flash is one of the biggest bombs in history. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. It's that bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because, like, the movie's pretty good, in my opinion. It's not the best DC movie since The Dark Knight. Like, it's not even close. But, yeah, I thought it had a lot of heart to it. Some parts did not have a heart to it. We can get to that. But, yeah, it's just, it needed more time in the oven. It's just a lot of underpaid visuals, for sure. But I think most people would agree, like, the start of the movie, at least like the first half or so, before the time travel stuff really goes down, it feels like a pretty solid like Flash movie. Like, the marketing was all about Batman, right? But it feels like, so it felt like a true Barry Allen story to me. Like, it's a lot of his supporting characters. It focused entirely on Barry. Still does for most of the movie, but yeah, it's just kind of a mess. Kind of bums me out. But we're here, and so oh well.
Yeah, if you, I'll give you a second, but before we get to that, it should take 2 seconds. If you didn't watch the Comicstorian official review, I agree with you, Neb. I enjoyed the movie. My biggest complaint about it is it comes across as like a Fast and the Furious or a Transformers movie. It's great. It's awesome. I might watch it one more time, but a year from now, I feel like most of us are going to forget it existed. Like
right.
That's where I feel like we're at with that. Dan, why don't you give your open-ended thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie. I feel like a big negative impression that a lot of people got was because of how poor the CG was on some things, where it was just so obvious that you can't not talk about it. I'm talking about the babies, as well as the whenever they put any CG person on screen, you're like, no. As Benny says, it was PS3 graphics. But overall, as an actual movie itself, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a cool take on Flashpoint, where it kept pretty true to the story of Flashpoint, but changed enough and altered some things that I was like, okay, this isn't what I was expecting when I heard Flashpoint, when I was like, okay, this is just going to be a carbon copy of every single other Flashpoint that they have done, which is way too many at this point. So, but yeah, no, I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it obviously had its downsides. It had its upsides, but overall, I'm glad I saw it. And I feel like when I look back on it, it's probably going to be in the same ballpark as the first Aquaman, where I enjoyed it. When I look back at it, I'm like, oh, I did enjoy it and I've forgotten the bad things. But when I rewatch it, I'm like, oh yeah, that, okay. I prefer the better opinion of it when I don't remember it fully.
Yeah. See, like that's kind of how I feel with the Transformers and the Fast and the Furious movies. I love those franchises.
Do not spoil Fast 9 and 10, Benny. I'm still gonna watch it.
So. God damn, is it a rainy day movie? Is it a rainy day movie?
No. It's a marathon. I'm gonna have to watch all the Fast and Furious movies in one sitting when I get back.
Okay,
one sitting.
But what I'm saying is with those is I don't normally go out of my way to rewatch any of those.
Not even Fast 5.
No, I'm gonna probably rewatch it finally with the wife. I've almost got her convinced to start watching. She tried watching Fast and Furious 1, and she didn't like it at all. And I'm like, okay, hold on, let's just jump to 4.
No,
Because
jump to
4's
5.
No,
If you
4 is when it starts getting like the way it is
4 is
now.
when it starts getting good, but 5 is a guaranteed win. And then they'll maybe want to go back and watch 4 for the context. This is not a Fast and Furious discussion, but it's important.
But anyway, the point I'm making is I love both those franchises, but at no point am I like, you know, we should go watch Transformers Rise of the Fallen.
First of
I
all,
can't
Dark
wait
of the
for
Moon is better, that's
Transformers
why.
Beast Morphers to drop, man. I can't wait.
I mean, I feel the same way about Batman v Superman, though. I didn't think that was a terrible movie at all. But I think the only time I've rewatched it is when the Ultimate Edition came out.
Hudson visibly grimaced when you said that.
I really wanted to like that movie. Like I did not like Man of Steel, and I thought I was being too critical of it at the time because I really loved Smallville, and Man of Steel came out on the heels of Smallville, and half the Smallville cast was in Man of Steel. So I was like, okay, I may be giving it too much crap. And then when Batman v Superman dropped around the same weekend as Captain America: Civil War, and the differential in quality just killed me, and I could never go back to it. I was really upset about it. I watched the Ultimate Edition eventually, though, and I didn't like it anymore. So
I liked the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition redeemed it for me, just like Zack Snyder's Justice League redeemed Justice League for me. I did, but once again, I'm a fan of Snyderverse. Husson is not.
Well,
so,
and I watched I never watched the Justice League. I only watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, and
don't worry, you didn't
I
miss
think
anything
if you
watching
watched the
Justice League.
first one, you might appreciate Snyder a lot more.
I
Oh,
think
yeah.
so too.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do too.
100%.
We should do that. You know what? You know, be a great discussion. You go watch Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League, and then you have a discussion with Neb about it.
Ooh, there you go.
why
God, that's
do you
like
want
6
me?
hours.
I will crap in the mouth of those fans because
That's
I know
what
what my
people
opinion
want.
is.
But we
They
have
don't- they
Neb
don't
on
want
the
to-
other side. If Neb likes CW, Neb likes everything. So
Yeah. I think it relates back to the Flash in an interesting way where it seems canon to Zack Snyder's Justice League because in the movie they reference the scene where Barry saves Iris from a car accident, which is not in the original, the theatrical version. But it also has callbacks to the other one with like just the tone and like some of the jokes as well. It's like it didn't really want to commit necessarily. I thought
Remember
it
the
was
last
bizarre.
time? Remember when I accidentally grabbed Gal Gadot's butt? Remember that?
Right.
Maybe
It
wasn't her
just-
butt.
Was it? Didn't he
was
fall
close.
on her or
He
something?
fell on
Yes.
her, his hands on her
On
breast.
forward. Okay.
It's
Which
Joss
apparently
Whedon's
is
favorite
one of the points of contention between Gal Gadot and Joss Whedon.
Because I don't think
he
it's Gal. That's her body double. because
She insisted on a
refused.
body double. He wanted her. That was the point of contention.
I
He
love the
wanted
way you
her
said it.
to be the
He
one.
wanted her in a little
Well,
Wonder
yeah.
Woman suit,
'Cause he
standing
did
on
that with
set.
Black Widow, right? Like
Yeah,
that
he
was,
did
that's
Black
just his
Widow,
favorite
too.
joke to do. So
And
He
then he's
loves
like,
that
and I
joke.
want to stand in for the actor that's falling. Just, you know.
Right.
Okay, guys,
But what
this
I'm saying
is exactly
is
how
that was
you
the
do
point
it.
of contention. Because if you look back at the point of contention on Justice League between Gal Gadot and Ray Fisher, they both have their arguments, but Gal Gadot's is the way that she was treated. And one of the points that did come out is that she insisted, fine, we'll do the joke. I don't like it, but give me a body double. And he insisted, no, it will be you. And that was the argument that kind of kicked off her
Yeah.
bad blood.
yeah.
Silly.
And that baggage has followed them to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
The point
so-
of I stand by my statement of like I don't deny something probably happened on the set for everyone to be the way they are, but but Ray Fisher won't let it go even though they had a full investigation, and now at this point I was like, Ray Fisher, feel bad for the guy, but he the investigation's over, just let it go. He doesn't want to, and I kind of go, okay, well that's his own prerogative, but like it feels almost like WB's petty about it. All right,
Yeah,
well,
they
his
are.
picture won't be
Oh,
in
yeah.
the WB Max, and you know what?
Yeah,
He
it's
won't
super
even get a
petty.
reference or a
They're
proper.
leaning on it really, like they're like keeping up the beef and the drama. I feel like Ray Fisher has something like whatever his statements are is about somebody high up enough that like no matter what they're gonna do, it doesn't matter what happens to them because they're just gonna spend. They have
It was Hamada.
billions of dollars. Yeah,
No,
it
it was
Hamada.
Hamada. That's what it was. Literally the president of WB is what he had.
Yeah, and keep
Yeah.
in mind, the Flash movie was originally, well, not originally. It's been in the process for a long time. But, when it was really starting to get moving development-wise in the DC Extended Universe, it was going to be a Flash cyborg, basically buddy cop
Yeah,
movie.
I remember this
Like-
pitch and I didn't like
really?
it. So
Yeah,
That
and it's
sounds
like,
terrible.
they like released a logo for it and everything.
But they made sure, like in all of these changes, they're like, just so you guys know, Ray Fisher is not in there, will not cameo, and we're barely going to reference Cyborg. Like
right.
in the
He gets,
movie,
like 2 lines.
Ray Fisher doesn't get any lines. There's like 2 lines where he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, he's not Cyborg here." Moving
Yeah,
on.
they don't even say cyborg. They
Oh yeah,
like
they don't refer to Cyborg by name. They just say like evil Terminator, not evil Terminator, but like something like that.
It's
and
something
he just
along
gets 2
those
lines of
lines.
reference, but yeah, you can tell they're just really I think what it is that they just don't know what to do, because it's like, if we include him, will he be upset about it or not? And that's probably why that whole thing with the Max avatars happened. And then they added him back, and they're just confused. And it's like, guys, it's not hard.
It's probably like a PR and marketing department with guidelines from the top brass, as well as like they're the ones who are attached to the public, not the top brass. So they're stuck in like a rock and a hard place. Like, how do we please people and not upset our boss?
But
Yeah,
I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to bring this back in because we're way off the rails. So the whole point of this video is to discuss why do we think and what do we know as to why The Flash failed. And there is a lot. So when The Flash was coming out, originally they had proposed it was going to make $150 million on the weekend. They quickly jotted that down to $100 million. And then right before it came out, they were saying they're expecting $70 million. At the end of the day, the domestic return, and they were saying that for a 3-day. So for the 3-day, they were expecting $70 million. For the 3-day return, it was $55 million. On day 4, they reached $64 million. So, and that's over a holiday weekend too.
Well, I'll tell you guys, as a
with the
person
box office, that's not good.
Now, I do want to throw something out there that does add some context to this, and we're going to discuss all the things that were done wrong with The Flash. But there's a few things going on. First off, the movie's been delayed for 3 years. So we're going to go in depth into all of this. The movie's been delayed for about 3-4 years at this point. There's the whole issue with the actor. The Screenwriters Guild being on strike meant that they couldn't do any PR or anything along those lines properly. And on top of all of that, there's a big question of whether or not it was The Flash directly, because the new Pixar movie crazily underperformed as well this weekend.
Well, and so did Transformers, by the way.
Yeah, and so
it's
did
not performing as badly. It's actually performing better than The Flash is, which is embarrassing. But yeah, every movie right now, and there's a lot of movies right now, besides Spider-Verse, are doing badly. Yeah, it's just not a good month if you're not Spider-Verse.
And it's weird the way that that's happening, Neb, because why are so many, like, everyone's pointing at The Flash, The Flash failed, but it's like, so did everything else. What are you, like, there's a lot more going on.
It's tough to compare everything else to it because it's a superhero movie from a big studio, and those are, DC is the exception to the rule of them being successful. Everybody else is doing great. Everybody else is raking in the dough. Even on a bad month, they're like, oh, man, we only broke $1 billion after box office worldwide. This is embarrassing. This movie's a flop.
I think if you boil it down, where it's like Elemental is failing because they sort of train their audience to just wait for their movies to come on streaming, right? And there's just no reason to see them in theaters. The Flash is failing because we'll get to that. And, Transformers is just extreme fatigue of that franchise, even though Bumblebee was great.
Bumblebee was great, but that also failed. Bumblebee
was great.
Yeah, that failed too. It's just after the 5th one, it's hard to recover. That was unwatchable. I couldn't do it. So yeah.
Rise of the Fallen wasn't that. Yeah, that was the worst one.
So yeah, it's just, if you take everything individually, it all makes sense. And then who knows how Indiana Jones is gonna do, right? That still hasn't opened yet, but that's coming as well. So yeah, it's a crazy month, but. The Flash in particular, I had to write down all the reasons I could think of.
Let's go through your list because it sounds like we agree on a lot of these. So
I wanted to say something actually real quick, because I think one of the biggest problems, and this is why I think so many of these films did poorly, is going to the movies is such an expensive experience now that you really do only. I bet most people go to one movie a month maximum. And I feel like when you go through and you're like, man, I've heard The Flash sucks. I've heard Elemental's not nearly as good. And Spider-Verse just came out, and I heard that's the best thing ever, and I still haven't seen it. I'm going to go see that one because it's going to cost me $30 just for like a single person to go get popcorn, a drink, and the ticket, and then go in. That you're not going to do that multiple times. And I think that's killing the movie industry, is that all these theaters are just hiking up their prices to ridiculous amounts that no one's willing. It's not like before where you would go, oh, that movie could be good. It's only like $15 for me to get popcorn, drink, and the ticket. Sure, I'm going to go. Why not? Whereas now it's more of a, well, I could do that, or I could do 5 other things for the same price,
and then get it on streaming in 1 month, month and a half.
I wanted to add to that before we go on the official list that Neb made. I wanted to add to that with the same thing. There has been plenty of movies that I bring up to my wife because I like going to the cinemas. I don't like doing the late night premieres. I'm a guy that likes to go out at like noon when no one's in the theater and be like, I'm so rich, I rented out the theater, and I didn't. I just went at a matinee price. I'm only dealing with the mom who wanted to get her kids out and then we'll shut the hell up. But anyway, that's a different rant. the 9 times out of 10, I bring up a movie and the response is, well, when's it coming to streaming?
Yep.
Because we can just watch it at the house for much cheaper, go out and get a nice meal or make something at the house and just do it that way.
Yeah,
It is hard to
Fast X is
argue.
already on streaming.
What is it?
Fast X. It was only in theaters for 2 weeks, but it made. I mean, it did good relatively compared to other
Oh,
movies.
I gotta watch
but
that.
yeah,
John Wick's
it's
there.
on streaming right now.
Wow.
I meant to go see John Wick, and I never got around to seeing it, and it's already on streaming, so I'm going to watch it there. Same thing
Yeah,
with Creed
and that
3.
took very long to come to streaming in comparison. I was waiting for that to get on digital for so long. I mean, Fast X was just I blinked and it's there. So, yeah.
I didn't even fast. It means I can probably get it on Prime then.
Probably.
I'm watching that today.
I'll give a perspective of a person who has gone out of his way to see most movies in theaters because I love theaters. I didn't see this movie. I'll see it maybe eventually. If Benny yells at me enough, I'll have to go see it for work. But if not, I'm not interested. The premise was fine. I didn't think the marketing looked that great. I wasn't. The suit looks cool, but it's not something that I particularly like. I heard Grant Gustin wasn't going to be in it, and it bothered me a lot because it's a multiversal film, and Ezra Miller was on Flashpoint. Like Ezra
Right.
Miller or was in Christ on Infinite Earths. They've been on screen together, so that bugged me a lot. I heard John Wesley Shipp was probably not going to be in it. That bugged me. So at that point, I was like, I don't want to watch a movie that I walk out of thinking you had carte blanche. You had a blank check to bring in whoever you wanted that was willing to come, pay them whatever amount. You could have made this is a fan service film. It's what it is. And from what I could tell from the marketing and then what I heard after the fact, it really didn't serve any fans, you know? And that's the thing that like really just like, I was like, maybe I'll see Spider-Verse a second time, which I did. A matinee showing. I caught a cheap little showing of it in the day.
I'm doing that tomorrow, actually. We're going to go to a matinee showing because my wife hasn't seen it yet.
When did you see it? Because there's they just remastered the audio and it's so much better than it was before.
I saw it when it first came out, so I'm excited to see what
But
the
we,
changes
It's
are.
so
we also got a good audio. Like we didn't have that problem.
Yeah.
At least I didn't feel
Yeah.
of the being drowned out or anything like that.
Okay, good. Then
Yeah.
you guys got
But
the good one.
let's bring this back. Let's bring this back. Neb, what's number 1 on the list you got? We're like 20 minutes into this video, and we have yet to hit the list Neb has. So
It's a podcast,
It's
man.
a big list. Yeah, because it starts with Ezra Miller. Where
That's it, that's
Well, I guess you just leave it there. But so the thing is about Ezra Miller. Okay, they're a very good actor, in my opinion. I watched. We need to talk about Kevin. Perks of Being a Wallflower. Doesn't really stream out as Barry Allen, but I kind of get it. Whatever Zack Snyder was thinking, I was like, you want to do a different take, sure. But controversies aside, and still we'll get to that. People just, when the TV show exists, when people think of The Flash, they think of Grant Gustin, and Ezra's Flash just never really connected with anybody in the same way, because all they had was Justice League and the theatrical version at that, and they were just really annoying, honestly. And I didn't mind it too much, but it really took until Zack Snyder's Justice League for me to really like that version of the character. I thought it was great, but yeah, just never connected with anybody. That's why they had to market Michael Keaton so much instead, Supergirl instead, and there's also the controversies on top of that, where suddenly you can't market your movie and have the main star go on like press outlets and things like that because they're I don't know where they are. I have no idea. They're just
Hey, we're at the red
out
carpet.
there, like yeah,
well,
it's true.
they were banned from being on any press tour just because of the backlash to everything. And I'll
Right.
agree with you. I'm going to jump on top of this one here, Neb. But I agree. First off, Ben Affleck as Batman got a lot of backlash, but when we saw him as Batman, it worked. Everyone was on board with it. But with Ezra Miller, once we saw them, it didn't work as well. And I think you're right.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like Ezra Miller as the Flash. On top of the fact that due to the PR nightmare that became Ezra Miller thinking that they were falling out of the dimension, if you go back to what it was all boiling down to, apparently, even though they've apologized, they're seeking help, all of this, the general public just sees Ezra Miller as a problem, and we don't want to support them in anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's either honestly a lot of the general public doesn't even know who Ezra Miller is. If you ask somebody on the street, they wouldn't even know what you're talking about. But then it's like if they do know, it's like, oh, that one. Like, it's there's a massive asterisk whenever you have to bring them up. And yeah, so already the movie sort of set up to fail in that way, where just never that casting just didn't work out. And I love it, but it is what it is. It just and then so they had to it's a Flash movie, right? But then all the trailers were just Batman. It was just constant Batman, and it was for a Batman that the target audience didn't grow up with, by the way. Like, it took a very long time to get to Batman 89 and Batman Returns, and I really loved like both of them. But it's like nobody in my generation really cares that much about Michael Keaton. Not that he doesn't have fans, and like of course he does. If you were a kid when those movies came out, you could not go outside without seeing that bat symbol everywhere, from what I understand. But clearly it just didn't work out. And all of his older fans, there was someone in the audience of the screening I went to. It looked like an older woman. Whenever they went to Wayne Manor, and she just started freaking out and was trying to restrain herself. It was the cutest thing. And there's a lot of people like that, but just not enough who would actually go out and to see this stuff. Yeah. So
I like Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Like I recently watched that film, and I feel like in my brain, he's more iconic as the Vulture than as Batman. And I grew
that's
up
your
around,
generation,
right.
Yeah, it's just what we grew up with.
And my Six Flags over Georgia, which is like a park that we went to all the time, it has like the whole entire Gotham Pavilion is Michael Keaton themed. It has Michael Keaton's Batmobile. It has his suit over there. So like that was like a big point of residence for me growing up. But if I saw Michael Keaton as Batman, I'm gonna be like, cool. Congrats, man.
It's basically if they wanted that to really be a draw, like how they got all the Spider-Man for No Way Home, they would have to get Christian Bale. And good luck, right? So it was just not a great start. Not at all.
It was a weird decision. It was also part of that decision to keep Michael Keaton around post that movie, which I'm glad didn't pan out the way they were hoping for.
Right.
Like, just so happy. But I agree, it wasn't promoted as being a Flash movie, even though it was The Flash. It was primarily a Batman promotion. Every promotion had like almost the entirety of Ben Affleck's entire scene in the trailer, because he wasn't around past that scene, really.
Yeah, he's just in the opening of the movie, and it's really obvious when you watch the trailers. I felt bad. I knew the whole plot to this movie like a year in advance or something like that. Every movie leaks online now. But yeah, it's just really clear that he wasn't going to be there. And he doesn't even really get to say goodbye either. He leaves with a great monologue, but Yeah.
What's the next point you have there, Neb?
I wrote down early screenings because they couldn't do a marketing campaign properly. And I've never seen anything like this before.
I want to hold you off on that real quick to explain that, because a lot of people don't fully know what's going on. So with the Screenwriters Guild, there's a combination of things holding back the proper PR tour and marketing tour that you would normally have with something like this. Not only did they not want Ezra Miller out there saying anything or doing anything that may jeopardize the movie, but on top of that, they also couldn't. So without the Screenwriters Guild there, a lot of what we assume is improv is actually all written ahead of time. And they just kind of have things written up. So as a part of the clauses, anything that may require a writer can't happen while the strike is happening. So that includes PR tours, where a lot of their answers are prepped ahead of time so they know what to say or how they want to handle it or things like that. So that's the exact same reason why Ryan Reynolds can't improv Deadpool in the Deadpool movie. So because of that, we can't have PR tours in the proper sense of the matter. So there was no PR tour. So like you said, now they did early screening. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Quick pause there. Yep. Does that apply to this one because the strike didn't start until May 2nd?
Yes.
So that implies that they could have done these tours prior, right?
They could have done an early press tour, which is what most movies do, but they were already going to do a limited press tour because of the lead of the movie will not be part of press. Okay. So it'd be weird to have,
because I think it was more like towards the Ezra Miller than the strike.
Well, no, I think it was a combo. I think instead of doing a proper press tour, because you got to think about it, Ezra Miller, they don't want out there, right? Mm-hmm. On top of it, what do you really think Michael Keaton was doing a full press tour? Which would pretty much leave the Supergirl actress to go around to the press tour. And it's like, well, she's not in the movie that much. Who else is going to do the press tour?
It was Sasha Calle doing interviews everywhere. She showed up to like 7 different early screenings. Like she carried the whole thing on her back, just completely. Like she's never been in a movie like this before. She's a rising star. This was like a big break thing, and she just carried the whole campaign on her back.
Yeah, she did great for the record.
And like I love her so much. She did so good. Because she got me into Supergirl, where I wasn't really that familiar with her character before. I knew like this, the surface level stuff.
You didn't watch Supergirl on the CW?
I could never get into it as much as the other shows, but also that was just more gender bent Clark than anything. So yeah, this was like actual Comets, Kara. It was like.
Well, how often does Clark have a little bit of romantic tension with Lex? Only some of the time. That show had it all of the time.
So. yeah, and then I wrote down early screenings because they couldn't do the traditional campaign. So I've never seen this ridiculous of an approach before, where they had at least 50 to 70 early screenings of this movie in America, let alone other countries, right? And it doesn't sound like much. And the idea is you bring all these fans and press out, and you build up the hype, and everybody talks about how good the movie is. Didn't really work out. People still said it was good, but nobody was really talking about it.
It sounded
Some
like
people
fake
saw this
hype.
movie.
Yeah,
it
no, I
sounds
think a lot
not
of people
real.
thought it was fake. It was
Like,
very,
why is Tom Cruise saying like, "Oh, the Flash is great"? Like, he did not, he did not
Yeah.
like this shit. So yeah, and it's just like some people saw it early multiple times, and it's like when you have all of your fans see a movie early for free, like, why are you surprised that it's not making any money? Like,
I'm
There's nobody
curious,
left.
actually, if someone could do the math to see how much it would have made
Yeah.
if all of the early screenings was counted.
Neb, I
towards
can't
box
imagine
office.
it's more than $1 million.
So it's not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
It's because it's combined on top of the other reasons. However, someone did do the math, and it added up to about like a few million, which isn't. It doesn't seem, because at the end of the day, it's going to make like 100, 200, 300 something million. So it doesn't seem that big a deal, but it's about the headline of the opening weekend, as always. So you always need as much as possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, it had its knees like slashed out from under it,
and it didn't even
And
pay it
so-
out like they wanted. Like people didn't
No.
go crazy. It immediately divided the internet to hate it, love it, hate it, love it, and it didn't turn it into a hype.
yeah,
machine.
and then the people bringing the hype, I mean, they were making vague statements, and half of them backpedaled once the movie actually released. And I
Yeah.
think that's going to hurt the individual brands quite a bit in the future. Just those content creators and influencers that were like, The Flash is a movie that you cannot imagine how good it is. And
Knew
then, like,
you were
people
gonna
just-
do that, Tony.
No, that's my stupid influencer. I'm an idiot voice. Okay,
You know
The Flash
that's our
is the
job.
greatest movie. The Flash is the greatest movie I've ever seen. It made brought tears to my eyes. Better than Spider-Man: No Way Home, and better than whatever Into the Spider-Verse. I heard statements like that, and then once the movie actually came out, it was like, The Flash is a movie.
Mhm.
It
That's
sure
like
is.
the end of the video.
It's definitely one of the movies of all time. It's, yeah.
One of the movies.
It like, and again, I love it. I'm making fun of it because it still deserves it. But like, yeah, it is just, it's not for everybody, and
Oh, yeah.
the third act really lets it down. It's definitely like the weakest out of the movie, and there's just the reason I wrote after that was DCEU baggage, where somebody pointed out that because Joker and the Batman don't count, no DC extended universe movie has made more than $400 million since Aquaman came out, which is just embarrassing. Like, do y'all remember that Shazam came out a few months ago?
I remember it came out.
The first one?
I remember it
The
not
first
doing
one.
well and no one seeing it.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no! I remember because I watched a lot of fan cams of the what's her
I
name?
bet you did. Yeah.
Mhm. Miss Marvel. You know what I'm talking about.
believe-
Not Miss Marvel, not Kamala Khan, not Carol Danvers. What is this woman's name? What is the
Grace
character's
Fulton.
name?
Mary Marvel.
Mary Marvel. Oh my
Oh.
God! Are you kidding me?
Similar
Incredible
to
I'm
Costume.
about
costume.
to
She
turn
also
into a
carried that
creeper, so
movie.
let's move on.
It's not a
Neb, what's
creeper
next
to
on the
acknowledge
list?
Right.
someone's
No,
gorgeous.
I said I'm going to. I'm going.
Oh yeah,
So-
you are, man. She looks so hot. We gotta talk about
All
it,
right,
dude.
fellas.
Did you guys
all
see
right.
her red carpet dress? That's how I know when the movie came out. Because she had like a red carpet dress that like was all over my Twitter feed.
I wrote DCEU baggage because there hasn't been a hit since Aquaman, and that was a miracle, by the way. I still can't explain why that made $1 billion, but yeah, it hasn't been going well. Shazam made $0. The Suicide Squad made like $2, and people blame the pandemic for that and how it went straight to streaming, which obviously played a part in it. But it didn't receive that good of a cinema score either. It was, I think it was a B plus, which if you don't know the cinema store grading system, that seems like it would be fine. But like if you're a big like comic book superhero movie, that's just, if you don't have like an A minus or above, it's concerning. So yeah, it's just been going down and down, and people are just used to these movies sucking. Black Adam didn't help at all. Very funny movie for the wrong reasons. So yeah, it kept getting worse and worse. And now like The Flash of all people, this movie is now estimated to make about like around 350 million or something when it's all said and done, like the whole box office run worldwide. And that's not good. To put it mildly, I think that it cost as much to make the movie.
Yeah, I want to jump on that actually on this because I do feel like the DCEU baggage is one of the biggest things, and I don't know if this is on your list, but I want to jump to what part of the reason I think that is. One, you're right. Every movie before this is not done well. They've tried to do this weird thing where it's like, it's kind of in a universe, but if you didn't like the universe, it's not in the universe. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like they were trying to please every fan, which was creating a lot of problems, like Birds of Prey, the Suicide Squad, and
Wonder
Suicide
Woman
Squad.
84, by the way.
Wonder Woman 84.
What's this Birds of Prey movie? I remember the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, but I don't remember Birds of Prey.
I'm gonna bite my tongue.
And Black Adam's a great example. You know, the whole hoopla with that. I think on top of that, one, people already checked out on pretty much the existing state of the DCEU.
Mm-hmm.
But having James Gunn come out before these movies dropped and be like, so I'm in charge of the DCEU and we're completely rebooting with Superman Legacy and that will be out in 2024. Now we have a situation of, do I watch Spider-Verse or the movie that doesn't matter?
Do I watch the
and so now
multiverse movie
Flash
that's
fans,
really great or the one that's not? let me think.
But so it comes down to, like, Flash fans are going to see this, hardcore DC fans are going to see this, but your general superhero movie going, I was watching one of my shitty sitcoms yesterday, and they made a joke in the middle of it where they were talking about going to see a superhero movie, and they responded with, "Oh, it's just a movie," and the geek of the group was like, "Superhero movies are not movies; they are experiences." And I know that that's a joke, but some people look at it that way, and when your experience doesn't matter because the universe is resetting and everything prior to that doesn't, I don't think that's a good look for the Flash.
It's not a good look at all.
They're literally telling you this doesn't matter. So if that's why you were going to watch it, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I will be fair to Gunn here because people don't remember this, but it was just that they really needed to please like shareholders and things like that. Gunn was basically told, "Hey, you're in charge now, but you need to come up with a slate by the end of whatever month it was."
Yeah.
And that is just absurd, and it's going to be an entirely different slate by the time everything's like done and out.
Everything's said
like,
and
I
done.
promise you.
Things released.
Yeah, because a lot of it is just like projects they already had in development. Like it was just picking up scraps and things like that. But he really didn't have a choice. And then it's just like Blue Beetle's still gonna come out. It's gonna do worse than this, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wouldn't bet my life on it, but
I
Aquaman
think
2
that
is
if
gonna be
the
horrendous
Blue
one.
Beetle has more positive hype surrounding it than the Flash had at any given point. Also, Cobra Kai is about to drop a new season, so because of that, Xolo Marduina is doing more press than ever. He's already like, when your name is Xolo Marduina and you're becoming a household name in America, that's a statement to within
that's
itself.
Crazy. And it's really banking on that like that underrepresented demographic for superhero movies. It's just that the trailer looked like really generic, and I personally don't care. I just love Blue Beetle, so it's like whatever. But there is a superhero fatigue now, and you can boil it down to other things. But it's like when you have Black Adam and Quantumania like back to back, and Love and Thunder, this and that. It's like I'm not surprised that people aren't like just seeing every superhero movie all the time anymore because they feel like they have to. And now it's like, oh, you really don't. You really don't.
Well, and that's what's going on with the Flash, because not only do we not like it, people are with Thor, with Quantum Mania, even with Eternals, we're getting the vibe from the MCU that everything doesn't tie together anymore. So only see it if you want to. But DC's been doing that mentality for a very long time now. Go see it if you want to. Don't worry about it.
Success.
We don't want you to feel like you have to watch all of them. They're all great standalone movies.
Guys, don't worry. You don't have to watch this movie that we spend millions and hundreds of millions of dollars making. Just don't worry about it.
Walter Hamada's idea was like, oh, we'll just do crazy stuff. We'll do Birds of Prey and Joker and all these like different weirder things. And I appreciate that because I respect like more artistically driven, just superhero movies, because there's a lot you can do with comic books. There's a lot of variety, but it just didn't work out for building a brand. And
because I think this ties into this, I also find it funny. This is just kind of a spin off of that. The amount of people that are blaming James Gunn and saying his universe is already a failure because the Flash failed, and I'm like, for someone who apparently knows what's going on in the DC world, how do you not know James Gunn had literally nothing to do with this movie?
So what he did have something to do with was that there was an article released where basically the Flash movie had 3 endings, and the first ending was the same as it is now, where Barry gets to the new timeline, but he doesn't realize it's different yet. It's fine, Hudson. It's okay. And he sees...
Never, you don't talk about the ending of the movie for me to put my headphones back in?
You're.
How
he
would
won't
you
give a shit,
know?
right?
How would you know that he
Kev
would
can't
be
even
done
single you.
already?
Like, Hassan, you do not care about this movie. It's all right.
I don't want to spoil the ending. Then I literally will never see it. I promise you. If I know the ending, I will never ever see it.
Well, I'm gonna
Right
ruin
now,
it for
I'll
you.
still probably watch it.
So he gets. I won't say specifics, but
No, it's
there's the ending. He's gone. So there's the ending now. That was the third ending they settled on. It was basically a similar ending before, but it was just with different characters being in the timeline, right?
Yeah.
So initially, Barry fixes the timeline, quote unquote, but then he realized he still messed it up a little bit. So it's Michael Keaton steps out of the car, and Ben Affleck is just gone, and Sasha Calle is there too. So now it's just them in the universe, and then there's going to be a credit scene where Ben Affleck would have messaged Barry about an incoming crisis, and then Walter Hamada was fired. So the ending after that was, I think, when The Rock was more of the guy in charge at the time, whatever that means. So it had Gal Gadot, Sasha Calle, and Henry Cavill, and a few other characters. It was basically everybody. Then James Gunn stepped in and just had that removed. So he did intentionally remove that because since he's rebooting everything, he's like, well, shit, now what do I do? So he added the ending we have now. They reached out to George Clooney. He's like, hey, wouldn't this be funny? And he's like, yeah, it would be. So he liked it, and he came to film the thing. And yeah, so I'm not saying he sabotaged the movie. I think the second ending would have been a lot nicer, to be honest. But
Yeah, it would have been
yeah.
kind of a send off to the universe, I think.
Yeah.
Right, that's the thing. It just doesn't feel like a send off now, and it's just in a weird state where like, is this the rebooted universe or not? Like it doesn't even like what's going on. So now
Yep.
it's just confusing, and that's what ties into you should bring Hassan back, by the way.
Yeah, I was waiting.
But-
I was waiting for you to finish before I brought.
So
Hudson back
another
in.
thing is
He has no idea
I don't
what
think he
brought back.
realizes.
Yeah.
Well, another thing is
Oh.
Yo, Hassan. My goodness.
Sorry, I'm back.
Trying to get ads in. So it got a.
His reaction was the best, though. Just like he's like, I'm just gonna watch shorts. F- you guys.
I was listening to music. I was trying to turn on the Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse soundtrack.
Immediately just no ad monetization anymore, but yeah. And so also on top of that, people just are pretty lukewarm on this movie. It got a B on Cinema Store, or a B minus. The point is that that's the same grade that Batman v Superman got, and that's not good. So for those who don't know how Cinema Store works, it's that people are sent out in random theaters across the country, and once people walk out of a screening, they are basically asked, did you like the movie, yes or no, and a few other questions, and it gauges the general audience's reception across the country to give a grade and see if they like it or not. Typically, if you're a blockbuster movie like this, you want an A minus or above, and if you don't have that, there's a problem. Like, B plus is when you should start like, what is going wrong? And I think that's what Black Adam got, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, so the fact that this got lower than that is very telling. It's because when you ask someone right after they ended a movie, it typically depends on the ending of a movie, right? Just how you feel overall. So yeah, with a confusing ending like this, and then it just the third act looking the way it does, right?
Yeah.
What a mess. Yeah, that was another reason I wrote down. The CGI is okay. So it is intentional at points. Whenever
No.
Barry's in the Speed Force, it is, and it's hard to explain until you see it, and it sounds like the stupidest thing in the world because it is.
No, I
And it
actually
doesn't-
agree with
It's
you.
not a good choice anyway,
I
but it is a
actually
choice.
agree with you on that because
Yeah.
once you see it in context, it actually works.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make it better, but
Yeah.
everyone, Hudson's having the general reaction of everyone else who sees everything out of context. You show me one out of context scene that takes up a millisecond on the screen, and you're going to go, wow, that looks terrible, but you don't even notice it watching the movie. That's the
Yeah.
problem with the CG in The Flash. You notice it. And it
Mm-hmm.
is intentional and you know it's intentional watching the movie because the CG that's not taking place in those scenes looks fine. You wouldn't even catch on that it's happening, which
Yeah,
would
so-
make you go, oh, so this is intentional. Well, it's intentionally bad. Like,
Yes, and it's like I kind of get what he was going for, where if you're in the Speed Force, nothing looks real and it's a bit uncanny. And like, sure, okay, it's not a good choice though. Is the
Yeah.
problem? So, and on top of that, by the end of the movie, in the third act especially, that's when all of the CGI just goes wonky anyway. And it's like if you have CGI intentionally bad in some places, then you can justify it if the rest of it is really good, I guess. This is kind of unprecedented. This is never really like, I'm going to make it look weird on purpose, right? But when it's in the third act and everybody looks like rubber, and there are so many shots where characters are CGI when they shouldn't be, and they could have just filmed those practically anyway, it's just baffling. You're just watching rubbery, watery, like a mess in a desert, you know? People already made fun of the set piece just because the setting is just so bland and safe, you know? There's just a lot writing against it. And I do still like the third act for the story, but it really does like kind of fizzle out. It's just strange. There's no big final battle like there typically is. And it's just, you know, yeah, it's definitely
or not a
more bizarre
satisfying
third act.
final battle.
Yeah, but see, I don't look at the actual context of the movie as being one of the reasons that this movie failed, because you don't know the context without seeing the movie. But I will say the CG getting pulled out of context and what, you know, where it's just like, look how terrible this looks. No, it's intentional, guys, and it looks okay when you watch it in the movie. That's not enough to get you to go watch it.
Right.
I mean, look,
and like
look
how
at how many
stupid
scenes
does
in the
it sound
CW.
to say that?
Like,
Yeah.
look how many terrible CG scenes from the CW that everyone likes to rag on, but actually only took like a millisecond in the show. You don't even notice it watching the show because generally they don't focus on it until it was the Force War. But that was just.
Yeah. And I wrote down the TV show as well, because at the end of the day, it's just a TV show. It was very popular, but not the biggest thing in the world. So it's not like it would have eaten into too much of the box office. It's just that, yeah, when everybody of my generation basically grows up with Grant Gustin, and this version seems inferior, and it's just doing a story you've seen before in the TV show. And even though the TV show became like unwatchable later on, you still hold on to the first few seasons and you cherish those. So yeah, it's like, why even go to see the movie when it's just, you know, like parts of it are just ripped from the TV show, and like obviously the comics as well. But you know, they try their hand at a few scenes from it
without
and doing a bit
respecting the
different
actual
versions.
actor or any of the production of the original show. Not one
Yes.
person that was on The Flash over its tenure was brought on. Not Tom Cavanaugh, not Grant Gustin, not anybody. So it's just like,
Yeah.
and it's a movie where they were allowed that. And Andy Muschietti was, the cameos, we didn't have enough time for them. And, you know, the CGI resurrection and desecration of multiple corpses seems like you
Right.
could have cut that and made some time for it, you know?
And you know, that is truly disgusting in a way I can't explain. And I was a bit easier on it when I saw it early the first time, because it's gross regardless, right? But
Yeah.
in the early screening I saw, they said they do preface it by like, okay, this is unfinished, you know, this and that. It's like, okay, maybe it'll be a little different. So there's so many layers to it where it starts out with and Hudson, I assume you've seen all of them at this point. So like, this
I haven't
would
seen
not
all
be
of them, but at
spoilers.
this point, I don't care about the cameos.
Yeah,
It's
and
fine.
this is so. First of all, in the context of the movie, it's very strange, and it just suddenly happens, and none of the characters acknowledge that it's happening, and it's just very clearly shoehorned in there. And then it starts with George Reeve as Superman, and first
Bad
of all,
idea.
nobody cares. To put it nicely, it's just it's cool in that it's the first Superman. It's very uncool when you read his Wikipedia entry and you saw what happened and why. Yeah, that's just not great.
Right.
It would have taken 2 seconds to think about that. And the idea is, at least with Christopher Reeve and Adam West, you could make the argument that maybe if they were still alive, they would say yes. And in that case, that's why they ask their families. And if the families say no, they can't do it. With George Reeve, he didn't have a family. They didn't have to ask anybody. They just put him in there without, like, there's no way. Like, he just didn't have an estate. So now he's just there in the role that he did not want to be in anymore, just immortalized in that, like, form. And he's just looks like a weird, rubbery, like, corpse. Yeah, it's just
Without
disturbing.
mincing words for the audience that doesn't understand it, there's a lot of context that goes into it, but the TLDR is George Reeve unalived himself as a direct cause of what Superman did to him in his life. Right?
Yes.
He was typecast. He could never get work again. It made him beyond miserable, and that's why it ended everything for him. So he was so ashamed and frustrated that was going to be his legacy. And this movie's like, what if we immortalize it? And fun fact, it came out on the anniversary of his death.
Right. And that was and like that's just there's no way they would that's just a really bad coincidence, but still it just makes it so much worse. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Christopher Reeve, which is just insulting in you know similar ways. But then the worst part is that they have people who were alive as cameos as well, and they shot the cameos, but then they replaced them with CGI anyway.
Yeah.
Like Helen Slater did film her cameo. So did Nicolas Cage, by the way. But
Nick
yeah.
Cage is in this? Okay.
oh boy, is he?
That's fine. That's a crazy thing to hear.
Yeah.
You said
Trust
you're
me.
fine on the cameos.
No,
Nick
I am.
Cage-
That just threw me out.
Nick Cage is a Superman fighting a spider robot. No, you gotta see
Giant
what we
spider.
It was made
Yeah.
entirely for Kevin Smith, and it's like honestly I think that scene's really cool because like yeah, to see his movie never got to be made, that's neat. But yeah, the point is that it's all CGI and strange, even though they did film all that stuff practically, and it's just really disrespectful. Where it's like with Helen Slater, it felt like oh well. Maybe the logic was like she's too old now, and they wanted it to be her in her prime with Christopher Reeve in his prime, and that's just gross. Like it's not like
That's
those
super
characters
gross
wouldn't
and
age.
weird.
Like yeah, those characters would still age and do things right. And then they
Oh, they're
have
super
the one I
wouldn't.
didn't
They're
mention.
super-
No, they
people.
wouldn't.
That's
God.
true. You're right. They're Kryptonians.
But they
But
could if
then-
they wanted to, and Helen Slater's a MILF now, so she should have absolutely just let her age. She's on
You're being
Supergirl.
so weird today, Hassan.
I'm allowed to say what I want to say.
it's
Helen
the
Slater,
middle
He has too much
school
power.
Hassan coming
Helen
out.
Slater played on Superman or on the Supergirl show. She played their mom, their adopted mom. So not like Erica Durance from Smallville's Lois Lane. That played Kara's like super Kryptonian mom. Their on Earth adopted mom was played by Helen Slater.
Yeah, and she's been very respectful of DC and everything. Even though her movie was such a disaster, she's just really sweet about it. And if you read the trade paperback for the Superman / Batman Apocalypse story, whatever comic story that was that they made the animated movie from, it opens with like an excerpt from her where she talks about Supergirl and everything. You know, she's just a fan, and she was at the premiere for the movie. You know, she loves this stuff. But yeah, it just felt gross, and the whole thing was shoehorned in. And like deservedly so, it's getting rads all over the internet more so than it was for Road One. You know, it's just this isn't something. Even if you get the family's permission, it's not something that really should be normalized in this kind of way. And it's definitely just nasty and extremely disrespectful. And like when you give in the context of who they were as well.
Yeah.
And,
So I do
yeah.
want to bring this back around and get us back
Mhm.
on the primary topic here of the reasons behind the failure. Because like I said, a lot of this stuff's coming out after the fact, and I know it's going to hurt word
Right.
of mouth. But
it's a bunch of things combining. And yeah.
right, it's a bunch of things combining, and I think that that's the big issue. Because I actually, if we were in a different climate, if this movie had come out in 2019, the whole Snyderverse debacle didn't happen, all the DC movies didn't happen, Ezra Miller didn't go insane, like all of these things didn't happen. I wonder how well this movie would have done, because if you look at it in retrospect, it has all of these aspects working against it from the get-go, and it still is able to pull in about 66 million. Now, do we feel that if let's assume the movie itself wasn't changed, okay? We're going to say the terrible CGI cameos, the terrible CGI, like all this stuff stayed. Do we think the movie would have performed better if all of these exterior factors weren't a part of this?
What year? Did you say 2019?
2019, because COVID changed a lot of stuff.
Okay, so I'll say 2019, it'll do terrible because it's coming out after Avengers Endgame and probably Spider-Man Far From Home. If not, it's coming out in between those two, and those two are a testament to special effects, acting, storytelling, beloved characters, legacy, right? As a whole, it's a love letter to that. And this movie, what I hear, what I've seen, craps in the mouth of legacy and effects and all these things. So
I actually want to tag on to that and say I think it might have performed better in terms of box office numbers, but I think it would have still gotten a very negative reaction from fans for the reasons that you're saying and for the
Right.
reasons we are complaining. But I think that would have been an ideal moment because everyone's currently hyped about this Marvel movie game changer. And now
Right.
this is supposedly the DC movie game changer. And I think more people would have been willing to go see it because they had that leftover hype from Endgame. And they're like, I want more superhero stuff. I need that. Like I got a need now. I need something to fix that.
A need must be.
Because it's just like how all of the like Disney Plus shows after Endgame, everyone was so hyped that they did so much better because everyone was in that mindset of superheroes are the big thing right now. I want to see what else is out there.
Yeah.
But I think the
I mean-
opinion would have stayed the same. I think the box office numbers would have been better,
Definitely agree there. Yeah.
I
There's a
mean,
lot of
because
little
if you look
things.
at it this way, in 2019, Shazam came out against a $100 million budget with $367 million, which is why it got a sequel. Batman v Superman, regardless of its bad reception and bad CG and everyone complaining, still did $872 million. Aquaman came out right before. So I'm thinking if this had originally come out after Aquaman or around Shazam, I do think, because Aquaman broke $1 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think this
What
would've
year did
done
Aquaman come out?
2018.
2018.
18.
Yep.
Okay.
It was after Endgame. I think it was Endgame,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
So,
Endgame
it
came
was,
out. That was
19.
after Infinity War. Endgame
Infinity
came out in
War,
19.
Yeah, that was also in 2019. Aquaman was actually a similar taste to The Flash, where Aquaman opened up. It was a Christmas release, so it was a summer blockbuster, but in the holidays, which they do pretty well. It was up against Bumblebee and Mary Poppins and something else that I'm. Oh yeah, Spider-Verse, the first Spider-Verse, and Aquaman made $1 billion against all of those. So then you cut to now, and Flash is up against Spider-Verse and Transformers again, and it's like, oh well,
That's so
they'll do it
weird.
a second time, and it's actually in the summer this time. They'll get it right, and it is no joke one of the worst bombs in box office history unfolding.
Well, we
in
have
front
to
of
take
our
into
eyes.
account, right? Like Spider-Verse, original Spider-Verse was a movie that was not. It was unknown. Now it's an Oscar-winning, franchise
Right.
animation.
The second one was
development
just doing
king.
so good because it got on Netflix. Nobody really saw it in theaters unless you were a big Spider-Man fan, and then
Yeah.
it goes on Netflix. Now everybody loves Spider-Verse. It's this huge thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of
I
things have
just-
changed, and yeah, it's too much.
I just feel that I think Flash would have probably. I don't think it would have hit $1 billion. I don't think it would have hit that
Oh, no.
regardless.
no.
I think,
Not
but
a
I do
million
think we would have beat Shazam. I think we'd be looking at it closer to 400 to 500 million. It probably.
For sure.
I feel like it would have been. I feel like it would have been one of those movies that if it came out at that time period, even with the complaints about what's actually in the movie, because that wouldn't have changed either way. The cameos, the CG, that was going to be there regardless. I feel like it would have kind of edged out where it's like it broke even.
Yeah.
That kind of a situation.
Right. And just because one of those development hell stories, you
Yep.
hear it time and time again for different industries. When something takes this long to make, this is usually what happens. Like,
Yeah.
just Andy Muschietti was just the guy who managed to get it out there. So he's being rewarded by the company just because he was the guy to do it. Love him or hate him. So
He looks like a supervillain. Have you guys seen pictures of him?
Yeah, he does.
He only has one picture. It's just the one.
He
picture.
looks like what is that? Netflix, A Series of Unfortunate Events. He looks like that guy.
Lemony Snicket.
Poor guy.
So, at the end of the day, regardless of what Hudson says, because we've seen the movie, this movie's
What's this
not
guy's
per-
opinion?
the-
Hey,
the-
here's you know what I have seen? My official The Flash ring from the movie. It opens and Barry Allen's suit does in fact
Why
come
did
out
you
of
waste
it.
your money on that if you're not even going to see the movie?
I like Flash rings. I own a lot of them actually.
You can just
Anyway.
mail it to me if you want. That'd be nice.
Even Neb, even Dan, we can all agree that the movie's not great. It's a fun watch. You'll enjoy it if you go see it. It's got a lot of problems. I do think this would have done better, but the development hell, the state of the DCEU back in 2019, 2020 was still in the mindset of, okay, we're coming out of Justice League, but we can fix this. We can fix this. I feel like even WB at this point is like, can somebody please watch our freaking movies?
Yeah, and it's the state of the MCU as well, where
Yeah.
now it's a superhero movie problem, and James Gunn nailed it, where he said people are just tired of the same movies they've seen already.
Yeah.
That's he always has a different emotional core in his movies, and that always helps. So that's what hopefully the DCU is going to rely on, and we will not be in this mess for another decade. I don't have high hopes, to be honest, but I'm exhausted.
I have high hopes. I don't care about this movie. I didn't care about this movie, but James Gunn as the lead, we don't need to worry about how Flash performed to worry about how James Gunn's going to do. We need to worry about how Guardians of the Galaxy 3 performed because I'm
Sure.
a person, I was never even a big fan of the Guardians franchise. It was not a movie that I was like, hey, I need to go see Guardians 3. I'm so excited about it. I saw it, and it's probably one of my favorite MCU movies.
777 million.
That's
That's
fantastic.
actually-
for
that's
this
outdated.
time period, that's great, right?
Yeah.
That's like one of the-
That's outdated. It's actually 820 million now.
So that
wow.
proves, in Spider-Verse 2 also proves, people aren't tired of superhero movies. They're tired of 20 of them a year that are all the same thing.
They're tired
Yeah.
of bad superhero movies.
Yeah.
Let's
That's
just
why
say the words
Black
that we
Adam
want to
crashed and
say.
burned. Black Adam was just like factory produced. You could
Yeah.
tell. Dwayne was just like, here's all the things that everybody else does.
Dude,
but
he
now
called him
it's me.
Dwayne instead of calling him The Rock. You used this Eagle name. Oh my
Government
god.
name.
Ned's
What is
coming
with
for
you
beef.
today, Huston? Calm down,
the
man.
hat,
Take
man.
the hat off. Take the hat off.
I can't. It takes my powers from me, man.
You've turned into Andrew Tate over here. That's what you've turned into.
Yeah, I'm confident that DC.
I knew that was going to take the hat off immediately.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
This episode's going on too long, man.
I can't do this. No, this
No, I'm
episode
kidding,
needs to
guys. So
end.
anyway,
This
guys,
has to end.
I think we've done a great job of talking about what caused the actual failure. What are obviously we talked about our thoughts about the whole situation of the movie and what could have been. Either way, let us know what you think in the comments down below. And I think we're going to call this episode of Absolutely to an end before Huston finally just goes way too crazy.
God help us.
We'll see
I gotta
you
go
guys
use the
next time.
bathroom, guys. That's all.